The NBA is screwing the 76ers this year when it comes to their schedule, and I'll explain why here in just a moment. Seems like the NBA always hates the 76ers. Before we get into it, you let me know. Do you think the NBA actually has it out for Philadelphia? Do they really hate the 76ers over there, Adam Silver, and the NBA league office? If you think they do, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. I want to know how many people are with me on this board. Now, before we get into how the NBA is screwing the Sixers on their schedule, when the schedule did drop for Philadelphia, I did a full deep dive into the schedule, the details, some of the key matchups and whatnot, and their full schedule as well, of course, in this video right here. So if you have not caught up on the Sixers schedule yet this season, be sure to go check out this video. Now, how did the NBA screw Philadelphia with their schedule? Well, if you haven't heard, the Philadelphia 76ers will have 16 back-to-backs this season. That is the most in the entire NBA. That's right. Given everything that's happened over the past year with Philadelphia and their injury history with their top stars, what did the NBA do? You know what? Let's give them the most back-to-backs in the entire league and tell them to figure it out, right? Now, it's not just Philadelphia up there at the top with 16. They are tied with 5 other teams, including the Denver Nuggets, Phoenix Suns, Washington Wizards, Charlotte Hornets. All 5 of these teams do have 16 back-to-backs, so it's not solely singling out Philadelphia, but still in a much different situation than a lot of these other teams here, right? Wizards and Hornets are tanking teams. Doesn't really matter. They're going to be resting players anyways. The Nuggets is tough, but they haven't really dealt with the injuries over the past few years that the Sixers have. And then the Suns, they're kind of a weird spot, retooling, rebuilding kind of year. I don't really think they're going to be too pressed about it. It's really just because of the injury thing with Philadelphia, with Joel Embiid, with Paul George, with Jared McCain. Even Tyrese Maxey dealt with injuries last year. Andre Drummond dealt with injuries last year. Eric Gordon dealt with injuries last year. So many players that dealt with injuries last season at the NBA decided, yeah, you know what? We'll have them play 16 back-to-backs, the most in the NBA. And look, we know Joel Embiid doesn't play back-to-backs. That's 16 games right there that he's basically guaranteed to miss already at the start of the season, even if he plays every other game because of the nature of those back-to-backs. Probably Paul George as well. But it's not just the NBA giving the Sixers the most back-to-backs as a reason why I think they hate them, right? Take a look here at the list of the fewest back-to-backs. And if you don't believe that the NBA at least takes some of their favorites into consideration in this whole ordeal, again, let's go through these teams, right? That had the fewest back-to-backs, all tied with 13. OKC Thunder just won the title. Indiana Pacers were just in the title. That makes sense. They're coming off of a trip to the NBA Finals, but still, think about it, right? OKC, obviously a favorite of the league, just won the title. Indiana also dealing with the Tyrese Halliburton injury, so giving them kind of a break there. The Celtics dealing with the Jason Tatum injury, so giving them kind of a break there. The Atlanta Hawks are a lot of people's sleeper pick this season to be one of the most improved teams in the Eastern Conference. They also just happen to have the fewest back-to-backs. The Dallas Mavericks, who the NBA gifted the number 1 overall pick and Cooper Flagg this season, also dealing with the Kyrie Irving injury. Oh, what do you know? They also have the fewest back-to-backs. You see what I'm saying? All these teams, Pacers, Celtics, even the Hawks dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and the Mavericks dealt with a lot of injuries last year. The NBA was like, yeah, you know what? We'll chill out on them. We'll give them the fewest back-to-backs. Not Philadelphia. Minnesota Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, one of the faces of the league. They get the fewest back-to-backs, and then, look, Chicago Bulls thrown in there. Obviously a bad team, but, historical with them. Michael Jordan, the NBA, throwing them a solid. So, look, I really don't think it's a surprise that this has happened. You throw it back all the way to the beginning of the process era and Sam Hinkie, right? The NBA never liked the 76ers from that point on because they didn't like Sam Hinkie introducing the strategy of tanking for number 1 overall picks and purposely losing games in order to get those better draft picks and develop young players. And of course, they ultimately forced Sam Hinkie out of Philadelphia, brought in the Colangelos to take over. That was a whole disaster. And ever since then, it just felt like the NBA, even if they're not really obviously taking it out on Philadelphia, there's just subtle ways here and there that you're like, man, the Sixers really couldn't catch a break here. I know they moved up in the draft lottery this past season, but still, it just generally feels like the NBA just does not like Philadelphia and does not like the 76ers going back to those early process days. Now, I will say there is one saving grace on this schedule. The NBA didn't totally throw everything at Philadelphia and just say, man, good luck this season, because the Sixers, when you look at the least miles traveled in games this season, third least by the Indiana Pacers, and once again, get some love by the NBA, and the Charlotte Hornets. So the Sixers, at the very least, don't have to travel all that much. When they go out west, they kind of play all those games at once. So it's not like traveling back and forth across the country, which is good. NBA players talk about this all the time. Like the back-to-backs, they're probably the biggest deal. Having to play games back-to-back nights is not great for the body. And, a lot of fans complain about it, but it just kind of is what it is. The second biggest thing they talk about is the miles traveled, man. And again, I know a lot of people will say they're getting paid millions of dollars, they need to suck it up. And while I do agree with that, it is real that having a ton of travel does have an impact on these guys and their routine. So at least the Sixers don't have to travel all that much compared to the rest of the league. But look, knowing the Sixers have the most back-to-backs in the NBA pretty much means Joel Embiid, again, will probably going to miss at least 16 games this season, even if he plays every other game on the schedule. I want you to predict it for me. How many games do you think Embiid's going to play this season? Will he get to 40, 50? Shoot, maybe even 60? That'd be insane. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. Now, we're going to flip gears here. I got you guys covered here on the show with everything going on with the Sixers. Is Quentin Grimes potentially in for a down year? Bleacher Report seems to think so. Before we get into all of that, got to give a shout out to today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Today's 76ers Now, brought to you by Prize Picks. Preseason football is over. Regular season action is almost here, and college football is finally here as well. So don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. Super, super simple to play. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Do you think you know ball? A lot of you probably do. Well, Prize Picks is the place where you can put that ball knowledge to the test and win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Turn that ball knowledge into real money all season long. One of the best reasons I could tell you to use Prize Picks, apart from what I've already told you, is the tremendous deals and discounts they provide throughout the entire year. And with the Eagles taking on the Cowboys week 1 of the football season, Prize Picks has a max discount for Dak Prescott. All Dak has to do is throw for more than half a passing yard, and you can check that one off on your Prize Picks. I hate Dak Prescott. A lot of you Eagles fans probably do as well, but that's pretty much a gimme right there. I have paired that with Jalen Hurts more than half a rushing and receiving touchdown, getting in there with a tush-push brotherly shove against Dallas, and then Saquon Barkley more than 92.5 rushing yards against what is the worst rushing defense in the NFL. It is that simple. So, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so as I teased just before, Bleacher Report, thinking that Quentin Grimes is going to have the biggest drop-off from last year this year out of all players on the Sixers roster. And while I understand where they're coming from with their reasoning, I do disagree. So first, let's get to what Bleacher Report had to say on Quentin Grimes. Even if last year's 28-game explosion for the Sixers represented Grimes' true talent level, he probably won't get to extend it over a full season as a second option starter. Now that assumes Paul George and Joel Embiid appear in more than the 60 combined games they played last season, which might not be the safest bet, I would agree there. Still, the Sixers have enough mouths to feed between Maxey, McCain, BG Edgecombe that Grimes can't possibly get the same number of on-ball chances he did a year ago. And look, from a statistical perspective, if this is how they want to base the biggest drop-off for each player on each team, I get it. he's probably not going to average the same counting stats he did with Philadelphia at the end of the season because, again, the situation he was in, it was pretty much Grimes, go out there, do what you can with this group of guys that we don't really know what their future is on this team. And they were losing a bunch of games, and Grimes was putting up big numbers. Now, I will say Grimes was efficient while putting up these big numbers. A lot of times you'll see guys at the end of the year really increase their scoring output, but their efficiency goes down. That did not happen with Quentin Grimes, which is why I'm so confident he can still have a big year this season. But I do agree, will he average 22 points a game this year for the Sixers? I would highly, highly doubt it. But to me, just because his points per game number might drop off by a few, that doesn't mean he's going to have the biggest drop off in terms of talent and production even for the Sixers team this season, because I think what he does for this Sixers team is so much greater than what the box score numbers are, even if they did look really good last year. And I think he can make a greater impact this year than he did last year on this team winning games. Let's look at some of the guys they mentioned, right? That he's competing for touches with, if you will. Jared McCain. Look, he's coming off that injury, that meniscus surgery from his rookie season where he played just 23 games. And look, he was fantastic. I cannot wait to see Jared McCain out there on the floor again this season. But we've got to see what his role is, what his conditioning is, just how healthy he looks coming off a pretty major knee surgery, right? It's been a while since he's played 5-on-5 organized basketball. So no guarantee there that he's going to take a ton of touches away from Quentin Grimes, who, by the way, I think Grimes ends up starting for this team anyways. And then VJ Edgecombe. Big VJ Edgecombe fan. I love what he showed in Summer League. I think he's got tremendously high upside with his athleticism. But at the end of the day, he's still just a rookie. We know how Nick Nurse usually feels about playing some of his younger players, despite him being the 3rd overall pick. And look, he's got to prove it. He's got to go out there. He's got to earn a role. I think he will. And I do think VJ will end up playing a big role and have a big impact for this team this season. But we've already seen Quentin Grimes be able to do that. So again, assuming he's back, because at the time of this recording, Quentin Grimes still isn't re-signed, I do think Grimes will still have a massive impact for this team. And again, it's not just the counting numbers, right? Will he average 22 a game? No. But what Grimes really brings this Sixers team, I think, is the key to the Sixers having a big turnaround, because he didn't get to play with Joel Embiid and Paul George and Maxey and all these other guys, right? I think as that, extra starter in there, right? You have Maxey, you have Embiid, you have Paul George. When they're all healthy, they're all going to take a lot of shots, right? He can really be that connecting piece who we've seen the ability to play on the ball, which is very, very encouraging, but he can play off the ball, catch and shoot threes. He's a great defender, which fits in perfectly with what this team needs. We saw him attacking the basket. He's going to make a big impact for this team, even if his counting stats do go down. So I disagree that he's going to have the biggest drop-off of all Sixers players. I think he could actually take a rise in terms of the effect he has on winning basketball games. What do you think, though? Will Grimes average more or less than 16.5 points per game this season for Philadelphia? Again, he averaged 21.9 in that limited action for Philadelphia last season. So a little bit of a drop-off statistically, but again, I think he'll still make a big impact. If you think it's more, give me an M. Think it's less, type L. Sound off what you think down below in the comments section. That'll do it here on today's edition of 76ers Now. If you enjoyed the content, you made it to the end of today's show, I encourage you to hit that sub button. We put out videos like this all year long. And look, the season's only a couple of months away. You're not going to want to miss anything going on with the Sixers, because we always know there's some kind of news or drama going on with this team, and we always keep you updated right here on 76ers Now. So lock us in, hit that sub button. Hope all of you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time right here on the show.